Get in on the action this season with Underdog's Pick'em game. Select higher or lower between 2 and 8 players and compete for up to 325 times your entry. Use code DIRECTOR when signing up to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a free pick. Yo to Bolt fam, it's the Director. Breaking news, Davante Adams has been traded to the Los Angeles Chargers, is what I'm sure a lot of you guys are hoping I say in this video. Sorry to troll, but it's true, man. This trade rumor has set Twitter ablaze. Lots of Chargers fans asking, hey, is this something that could legitimately happen? Davante Adams, of course, if you guys haven't heard, wants out of the Vegas Raiders. I think all of us knew that was the case if you saw the documentary on Netflix, Receiver. The dude very unhappy with his quarterback situation with the Raiders. Of course, he went there to begin with for Derek Carr, right, which was his college quarterback. They let go of Derek Carr a year later. Now it sounds like there's a potential for him to reunite with him in New Orleans, maybe a reunited situation with him and Aaron Rodgers in New York. Who knows? Are the Chargers part of that, though? That's what you guys are here for, and that's what I've been hearing a lot of questions about in the last 24 hours. Do I endorse the idea of Davante Adams to the Chargers? Is it something that could happen? Well, of course, I would love Davante Adams with the Chargers. I think that would be an awesome addition, but it would be a very tall hill to climb, man. It would be a lot of moving pieces around that. Is it impossible, though? I'm going to say not impossible, and something we're going to talk about in this video, but certainly one that I think would be a lot tougher than some of the other trades that we're going to talk in this video. The trade topic has been very hot lately because a lot of players are coming out in terms of speculation of being moved. Lots of receivers that could have the Chargers in talks to actually add somebody here soon. And in an era that involves Joe Ortiz, we've already seen some trades. Things are different for the Chargers going forward. I think we could be legitimate players in the trade market here early in 2024 in Jim Harbaugh's first season. So let's give it a go, man. I got a bunch of players on here. I think the Chargers could be targeting players that could add a lot of heat for the Chargers this season in terms of their success behind Jim Harbaugh's first season. Should be a lot of fun. Before we do kick things off, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $1,000. Newcomers take advantage of the free Kirk Cousins pick. Is a great way to support my platform and have some fun along the way. Before we kick off, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. The small amount of time you guys take to the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into it, baby. Lights, camera, action.
Who's got it better than us?
Chargers trade targets. These are players I think the Bolts could be players for, or I should say could definitely be in play for a Chargers trade here soon. And honestly, it's one that I think does help reflect my opinion on the new Chargers regime. Joe Ortiz, the new GM, has already gone out there and made some trades, including Chargers' new backup quarterback, Taylor Heineke. It's a trait that he has maybe carried over from Baltimore. He's definitely not afraid to be making moves in season. And in a year where the Chargers are trying to figure things out, what is their identity? What do the pieces look like that we have in-house right now? Maybe it's not a bad idea to add some pieces now that they have a better understanding of where they are here in week 4. It also does help that the Chargers are in a bye week. They're really evaluating what the roster is, what it needs, and maybe news of a recently available Davante Adams could help move the needle in the direction of a trade. Maybe, getting things started there, but also, starting a spark of trade talks with other players that have been since rumored to be moving on from their team. So let's start with the obvious, okay? Davante Adams. This is something I've been getting absolutely pestered with in terms of questions about whether or not the Chargers should make a move on him. Again, to reiterate, yes, this is something I would 100% endorse from the Chargers. This is something I think would really help them out right now in terms of figuring out the passing game. Justin Herbert looks like he needs some help out there. The offense hasn't really been, moving in the direction I'm sure that Jim Harbaugh has wanted in the first 4 or 5 weeks. And this is something that, Jim Harbaugh is kind of known for. When something's not working, he's not the kind of coach that Chargers fans are used to, where you kind of sit on it, do do the same thing, hope for different results. He is more of an action taker. And if he sees something's not working with the offense, there is going to be adjustments made. And if it does involve adding a player, it's something that he may exercise doing and put in favor with Joe Ortiz in making a move for. Is Davante Adams the move for it? It could be. It could be. And some people say, why would we do this? Why didn't we keep Keenan Allen? A lot of it does come down to money. Keenan Allen would have been like $30 million. You can go out there and get a different veteran wide receiver to fill that position for a much cheaper price tag. But is the price tag going to be worth it for a guy like Davante Adams, who is 31 years old? He's under contract until 2026. Mind you, that I think the next 2 years are not guaranteed. So there is definitely room to renegotiate that contract if he does sign with a new team. But if in terms of cost, you are still probably looking around $11 million. These are metrics that were pulled from Over the Cap because a lot of the numbers have been prorated because he is now 4 weeks or 5 weeks into the season. So with all that kind of put into play and all that in mind, could Davante Adams come to the Chargers and really add that veteran wide receiver presence that they kind of desperately need at this point? Not that they're not terrible, right? Ladd McConkey's looking awesome. Quentin Johnson's really coming into his own, but that veteran wide receiver presence is something that the team does sorely need. And I don't think there's a better option right now out there than Davante Adams in the entirety of the NFL. Is it going to happen? I don't know, man. They want a second-round pick for a 31-year-old player and some change, by the way. We are a division rival. It would be something tremendously rare in the NFL to see happen via trade. You see players move to, rival divisions all the time via free agency. Trade is a lot harder to pull off because you're making life a lot more difficult for yourself inside of your division. Not to mention Tom Telesco, his relationship with the Chargers. I don't know how that looks. It could be a direct line to the Raiders to help something like that, happen. It could be a deterrent, like maybe there's some bad blood there. We just don't know. But the fact of the matter is, I think a trade between the Chargers and the Raiders is already very unlikely. A player like Davante Adams seems even more unlikely to me. And from what we're hearing, Davante Adams, it sounds like I mentioned at the top of the show, he wants to go to a situation where he's got a quarterback he's familiar with. Derek Carr of the New Orleans Saints could be a very realistic destination for him. Obviously, the New York Jets with Aaron Rodgers out there, which I think is maybe one of his better options, is definitely something I could see happening, and probably the most likely, in my opinion, at this point. And for those reasons, I don't really see Davante Adams joining the Chargers, as exciting as that would be. I think our best chance to have in making that happen would have been when he was moving away from Green Bay over to a new team at that point. Okay, but that doesn't mean that the Chargers can't go out there and grab a wide receiver, veteran wide receiver that could make a big impact this season, and other players of different positions. I got other positions on here too that I think the Chargers should move in on from teams that are sinking, like the Dolphins and the Panthers. Right, the Panthers are kind of rebounding now, but you guys know what I mean. Let's start with the wide receivers, though, man. We got a player that, honestly, when you take a look at the revolving situations, the contract, the years, the age, and all that kind of stuff, it really is something that I think the Chargers would favor a little bit more than a Davante Adams trade at this point. It's going to be Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper, to me, he's one of those players that is really undervalued, unappreciated in the NFL, especially if you're a fantasy football player. Like, this is the kind of guy that you ask him to do something, he's going to go out there and do it every single year. Very reliable. He's definitely in that veteran, status at this point, 31 years old. He's been around. He knows the league. He's still performing at a very high level. I love everything about Amari Cooper, as a matter of fact. The thing I love the most at this point is that it would only be like $900K to add him to a roster, like $1 million to add him to a roster at this point, which is definitely within the Chargers' budget. And I failed to mention the kind of money the Chargers are working with. I think at this point they're in and around $7 or $8 million in available cap. So that is something you have to put into consideration when thinking about adding a guy like Davante Adams, who would cost around $11 million. Of course, money could be moved. Any move can really be made in terms of money, so don't let that stop you. But I like getting value where you can find it. Cooper and a lot of these guys, I would say maybe even all of them, You got contract years. You've got motivation for trade. You've got a team that's not performing or situations by a particular player that warrants a move. I know Amari Cooper has been heavily rumored as a trade candidate these last 24 hours. And I think from what I was reading, it sounded like it was more of a chemistry thing between him and Deshaun Watson. The Browns are looking to add different talent to complement Deshaun Watson in some way. I think it's a Deshaun Watson problem, if you ask me. I don't think it's a Amari Cooper problem. But hey, whatever the losses for the Cleveland Browns will take as a gain for the Chargers. And there's really no commitment to Amari Cooper past this season either. The only thing you would be out is draft compensation, which I have to assume would be pretty low to try and acquire a guy like Amari Cooper. I don't know what they're asking. We haven't heard any asking price for any player other than Davante Adams so far. So I would speculate, and again, this is me spitballing, don't take my word for it. I would say like a 4th or 5th round pick for Amari Cooper at this point of his career. He's older, he's still performing, but there's no guarantee after this season. I have to wait and see. I don't know, but I would say it wouldn't be anything too incredibly high. I think 4th even is a bit high for me. So I would say, spitballing again, probably around a 5th round pick is where I would feel comfortable, and it feels really realistic at this point. Amari Cooper would add that veteran presence you're looking for, a nice perimeter receiver to complement, whoever it is out there running outside. Sometimes it's QJ, sometimes it's Ladd, sometimes it's, Quinton or a DJ Chark, who should be coming back here pretty soon. Keep that in mind, guys. We got players returning after the bye week, and Chark could be among those names to help the Chargers in wide receiver. I think Amari Cooper would be a fantastic option for this team. And when you ask me, would you rather have Davante Adams or Amari Cooper? Of course, if it's just black and white, which player do you want on your team? You're going to say Davante Adams every time. But in terms of the situation, money, age, all that kind of stuff, Cooper, who is younger, I'm going to go with Cooper on this one. He's probably my favorite wide receiver target for the Chargers at this point. Unfortunately, the last thing I've heard in terms of rumor for trade is that the Kansas City Chiefs are the ones targeting Amari Cooper at this point. So, hey, a little added motivation for Joe Ortiz. Let's go block that trade and add him to the Chargers instead. Justin Herbert, at this point, I think would really appreciate some veteran leadership from the wide receivers. And again, not that, we don't have weapons. We do, but these guys are young. Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston. Sometimes you get a veteran guy in there that can really help these dudes out. It does make a big difference. And that's why you see teams like the Bears going to get Keenan Allen, the Texans getting Stephon Diggs. It is an important aspect of a roster, and I think the Chargers kind of need that right now. So Amari Cooper is my favorite option. Another name that I've been getting asked a lot about, which I kind of see it, it's not my favorite name on the list of wide receivers that we could go after, is Odell Beckham Jr. He is older, like 32 or 33 years old. Wouldn't be very expensive to sign, in and around the same price tag as an Amari Cooper. He does have familiarity with the Baltimore Ravens, which is a huge aspect to the team build this offseason. Lots of players coming from that organization, or history from that organization. It does make a lot of sense on the surface. He's just coming off an injury, though. It sounds like he's getting close to ready to play. The Dolphins, again, a sinking ship. Do you need OBJ right now? If you can't even get Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and the amazing, flurry of wide receivers you have in that room going right now, do you really need OBJ at this point? Or would you be willing to get a late round pick at this point? Now, again, I would say maybe a 6th or 7th round pick from the Chargers to get OBJ, onto a different team. I think it would be very realistic for the Chargers to make this move at very minimal cost. Is it something I would do? I like the Amari Cooper deal a lot more. That's all I'm going to say. I think I would be willing to do this. Would Odell Beckham Jr. be the kind of veteran you want in that locker room? I don't know. It sounds like he's taken a tremendous turn for the better in terms of character and leadership. I'm not there, so I don't know. It just feels like Amari Cooper is probably the better option to me. But hey, I'm not gonna overrule it though. I mean, I wouldn't hate an Odell Beckham to the Chargers. I don't know if I've seen as much production from him as I have Amari Cooper recently, and Cooper on the field more. There's a lot of reasons. And so for roughly the same cost money-wise and maybe a cheaper cost draft pick-wise, he's an option. But I think I still go Amari Cooper in this situation. Another player that's been heavily rumored in trade talks the last 24 hours has been DeAndre Hopkins. I'm going to be honest with you guys, man. I would be for it, dude. I would love DeAndre Hopkins on this team. I've been a big D-Hop fan for a long time. Dude, just as a fan of football, it would be so awesome to see this man in powder blue, sporting the lightning bolts. But I just don't know if the revolving circumstances are as friendly to the Chargers. Like Odell Beckham, I can't imagine he fetches a huge price tag in terms of compensation. Maybe closer to Amari Cooper. You're probably talking 5th or 6th round pick for DeAndre Hopkins, because he does carry, you could probably get away with a 6th or 7th if I'm being honest, because he does carry a bigger price tag than the other two guys by a lot. To sign DeAndre Hopkins to your roster is going to cost your team roughly $7 million. And again, as exciting as it is for DeAndre Hopkins to join the Bolts, as a big fan of DeAndre Hopkins in his career from the Texans to the Cardinals to here at the Titans, and as a big advocate to sign him in every one of those years he was, or I should say in the year that he was moving, every year that he was moving, I still think there's better I think, again, I'm going to be very hung up on Amari Cooper because it's just the perfect situation for the Chargers at this point in terms of veteran wide receiver. But if the Chargers do want to get aggressive, and DeAndre Hopkins, to me, who fits very much so in the same category as Davante Adams in terms of performance, because I don't know if you guys have seen, I know he's been hurt, so there's not been a whole lot of talk about DeAndre Hopkins. He's been in a bad quarterback situation, just like Davante Adams. So you're not hearing a lot about what he's doing out there. But from what I see when I'm watching the Titans and when I'm watching him play, he's been good, man. He's looked awesome. Like, he's not been his old self, but he's certainly been a very good version of DeAndre Hopkins, which I would take 10 out of 10 times. So if the Chargers aren't as intimidated by the money part of things, I'm about the DeAndre Hopkins pick. I really am. I would love to see him on this team, but I would rather flex other options at this point in terms of veterans that are a bit cheaper in the wallet, right? $7 million is a lot. And maybe there's a way the Titans eat a little bit more of that to make it a bit friendly for a trade. Maybe you do, instead of giving a 7th, give up a 6th, and they eat like $3.5 million of that contract. Then I feel a lot better about it. But he is 33 years old, and it's something to take in consideration. Now, there's the go big trade, and this is one that it's a little bit harder to pull off. The money's going to be a bit more complicated. You're going to have to move some stuff around. It's T. Higgins. And T. Higgins has been someone linked to the Chargers for the last, season. Now, the offseason, there was a lot of talk about T. Higgins being moved. Where would he go? The Chargers were constantly linked, and it's for good reason. He's an awesome wide receiver. He's a very, very talented dude. He would fit in pretty much any system and scheme. Would the Chargers move in on something like this? I don't know at this point. He's got a $17 million price tag attached to his name. Because of the talent, I'd imagine you're at least on the hook for a 2nd or 3rd round pick. It would be a very, very high cost transaction for the Chargers. But because the talent is so good, and because you're potentially looking at a Justin Herbert wide receiver 1 option for the next 3 years, maybe 4, it could end up being something the Chargers see as a fit and would be willing to move money around to make happen. I just don't see it as likely, but it is one that I hear a lot of questions about. Is T. Higgins a good move? Would he be affordable? Is it something the Chargers should do? I'm going to say kind of. There's a lot of things I like about it. Of course, fantasizing about T. Higgins, number 1 wide receiver for the Chargers, is certainly exciting. But with the draft that's coming up, another very strong wide receiver class. If you're going to go for a younger guy, that doesn't have that kind of price tag, that does have a huge ceiling, it still feels like the draft is probably the better move at this point, unless you need something right now this season that you want for a long-term answer. That's why I like and I favor the veteran options for right now, dudes. A lot of people will say, why are we trading for this old dude? He's only going to be on the roster maybe 1 or 2 seasons unless, you renegotiate or whatever. Like, what's the point of it? Well, we kind of need a guy right now. There's not a long commitment, right? The money's not too severe. It's a very low impact risk for the Chargers, which would bring in a lot of help from a position that does need a lot of help right now. and you're not going to be attached to it for too long either. You're going to have options to move on or stay or whatever the situation may be going into next season, even with the draft. There's a lot of things I like about getting a veteran wide receiver right now, especially at a decent price. So, I don't know, that's just me. Let's move on to some other positions. Now, I'm going to focus on the offense for this video. There are some positions on defense that I think do need some attention. I think corner could use a trade. I just didn't see very many trade options from teams. You take a look at a team in their situation at this point of the year, week 4, right? Not every team's willing to start to sell, right? But you also want to take a look at individual contracts, guys on contract years, money situations, whatever. I didn't see too many options at corner where I was like, hey, let's go get that guy. Maybe Tre'Davious White, who's not been awesome this year. Couple of dudes out there, right? But I wanted to focus more on offense for this one because offense has been really the side of the ball the Chargers need the most help. And one position that I do think could actually see some movement that the Chargers might see a big push and a big help from is offensive line. And the Carolina Panthers actually have a not bad interior this season. The Chargers or tackles are some of the best in the league. So our situation there is awesome outside of maybe swing tackle, which I think could use an upgrade. It's the interior that needs help right now. Okay? And the Carolina Panthers, who are on a team right now that, yeah, they're starting to bounce back a little bit because of Andy Dalton, could still be very much so in a position where they're willing to sell some pieces. Do they sell Austin Corbett, though? Corbett, I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't know because I don't know what their situation looks like behind him, what the answer would be for the rest of the season, but he's the kind of player at this point right now where I think he could fetch a decent price. He is 30 years old, but this is actually a great solution to a Chargers problem that we're having right now. Was he with the team with Carolina last year? I think he has been for a minute, right? I'm pretty sure he came from the Rams at some point, but he might have some familiarity with Bradley Bozeman. This is a guard turned center for the Panthers, and this is one of the best transitions we've seen at the position in a while. Austin Corbett is an awesome center for the Panthers. Very standout in terms of his pass blocking. I don't think he's allowed a sack this season. He's been very, very, very consistent. He would only put you on the line for $3 million in a transaction via trade. You could probably still get a 4th rounder for this dude, even at 30 years old, because yeah, he'll probably be able to play into his mid 30s. But he checks a lot of boxes for me in terms of a short-term center for right now, because yeah, Bradley Bozeman, the center last year, they took kind of a shot in transitioning Corbett from guard to center. It worked out great. If we can get a piece of it, man, I would like to take a look at center and see what we can do, because Bradley Bozeman, he's been okay, but definitely not where we were hoping. And the interior of that line does need a lot of help, in my opinion, at this point. Corbett, if the Panthers are selling, dude, that's one of the dudes I'm looking at. He's been awesome. He's obviously got position versatility. He can help you out at guard at a very high level too. I really have been impressed with what I found in him, and he would definitely be a very high guy in my list of players I would love to see the Chargers go after if they are really going to be trading at this point of the season. Now, another guy that I think is Harbaugh certified, because I think this dude would be great on the Chargers, man. Of course, the Miami Dolphins have been a sinking ship since losing Tua. Man, go out there and get me Liam Eichenberg, dude. This guy, okay, guard for the Miami Dolphins. This dude is the exact kind of run blocker you want for the Chargers on this team. And he would be competing and stepping in, I would say, for Trey Pipkins, right? Maybe even Zion Johnson. There's some versatility there. But he is everything you would want in a Jim Harbaugh run blocker. He's not a bad pass blocker either. He definitely grades pretty decent there, but he's a very, very good run blocker. And that's where I think the competition would be a bit better between him and Trey Pipkins. I think Trey Pipkins has actually been a pretty decent run blocker, but he's been a really bad pass blocker in the middle, right? you get a much upgraded pass blocker in a guy like Liam Eichenberg and a very, very good run blocker too. This is also an option where you can start building for the future a little bit. Liam Eichenberg's only 26 years old. So and he's a big dude. So if you feel like you have a future piece here, he's only $2.6 million to sign right now. You probably have to give up like a third or fourth rounder to get him, but it feels like a really good option for the Chargers who need interior help. Austin Corbett, Liam Eichenberg, these are definitely the kind of pieces that can really help turn a line around. Now, it's a little bit more difficult because the line needs time, so whoever you get out there is still going to need time to jive and gel. Without the offseason, is going to be particularly tough for this position. But these are solid options if you want upgrades in the middle of that line. And the Chargers' interior of the offensive line needs the most help right now, in my opinion. All right. I think the last one from the Panthers that I kind of like, and this is going to be more of a preference thing. He hasn't done much to warrant it, but I liked what I've seen out of him, at least, in terms of potential. Tommy Tremble, tight end, Carolina Panthers. They do have some cool tight ends out there. Is it the rookie? I almost said Mo Cox. No, he's with the Indianapolis Colts. He would be not a bad option either. He's a pretty good run blocker. But they did get Jatavian Sanders as well, yeah, and I don't think they're going to be trading him anytime soon. But Tommy Tremble, to me, he's young, 25 years old. He would be about $2 million to get onto the roster. I think he's got a pretty high ceiling. He could be a decent blocker, but he's a good receiver. That's what I've seen out of him. And he would be one of those guys that'd be willing to take a shot on if they're willing to move on. But, hey, that's more of a preference thing. If you're looking for a guy that really fits the mold, though, at tight end, Nick Vanna is going to definitely be the one, dude. He's on the Titans right now. Titans, we all know, are definitely not going to be moving the needle anytime soon in terms of championship hopes. But he's definitely one of the best blockers you're going to find in the NFL right now. And I'm pretty sure, wasn't he a free agent earlier this season? And he was maybe one of the targets that we were looking for the Chargers to sign. It's turned out that way in season. He's 31 years old, so he's a bit older, but he's a very, very good blocker. He'd be like a mill to get on the roster. If the Titans dissolve a little bit of the roster, this is probably one of those guys I would go after. Nick Vanna is a very good blocker. Chargers, even if you're just looking at depth, could maybe use some help out there. But I would really like to see a world where we run out there with 2 or 3 tight ends, and at least 2 of them are really good in the run blocking category. I don't know how Hayden Hurst has been in run blocking this season. He was really bad last year. But Will Dissly, I know, has been decent. Get another one in there, I'd feel pretty good about it. But I will tell you guys this right now, and it's tough because the environment out there is not particularly good if you want to go trade for a tight end right now, but that is probably the position that I want the most on this team right now. And yeah, wide receiver is important. It's one that I'm paying a lot of attention to, hence why we have more wide receivers on this list than any other position right now. But if you were to ask me, Director, you can go out there and get a big upgrade at one position for this Justin Herbert, Jim Harbaugh squad. What do you want it to be? I really want a tight end. And yes, there's options coming up in the draft. Colston Loveland is a huge favorite, but not a guaranteed. Outside of that, how many big tight ends are coming into this draft? I don't know. I know of a few, right? But it feels like just going and getting one in terms of trade is also a very, very strong option. And there is a guy that the Chargers fans have been asking me about a lot these past couple of weeks, and it's been Mark Andrews. The biggest reason Mark Andrews is being talked about is because of the dominance of Isaiah Likely lately, especially in his first week. Man, that dude went nuts. Isaiah Likely looks like the real deal. He's actually, if you take a look at PFF, Isaiah Likely is the best run blocking tight end in the NFL. On top of that, he's crazy fast. He's got great hands. Great route runner. Isaiah Likely's going to be the next big thing at tight end, dude. He's insane. His teammate, Mark Andrews, has been taking a bit of a back seat, though, to that. And Mark Andrews has not looked like Mark Andrews of the past this season so far, at least. Don't know why. Don't know what's up. All I know is, though, that Mark Andrews, even if you start looking at grades now, too, is still a very, very good tight end in the NFL when you break it down. As a matter of fact, he's a couple of spots down from Isaiah Likely in terms of the best run-blocking tight ends in the NFL today. Isaiah Likely is number 1. I think Mark Andrews is number 2 or 3. I think he's 3. And that is still very, very good if you're looking for an identity piece of this team. Justin Herbert needs this. I honestly truly believe that a legitimate tight end 1, a dominant tight end 1 would help more than anything on this offense right now, because you're looking at a guy that's not only going to really help elevate the run game with their run blocking skills, but if you get a guy particularly like Mark Andrews, you may be treading into receiver 1 territory, right? There's been teams in the past where that tight end just really feels like the most dominant threat. Right now, it feels that way for the Kansas City Chiefs. I know Kelsey hasn't been what he's been in years past, but he's like definitely their best option. I think that kind of could exist for the Chargers, especially in this offense. And with the contributing factor to what they can offer in the run game, too, it just feels like a very good move for the Chargers to make right now. Out of all of the options I see on this list, Mark Andrews is kind of my favorite. And I'm a big fan of DeAndre Hopkins. I'm a big fan of the Amari Cooper trade, which I think is probably the most likely at this point. But Mark Andrews, I think, maybe makes me the most excited in terms of potential. Yes, you would have to try and unearth or resurrect some of the talent that made him special in Baltimore to begin with, but we already kind of know that exists with him and the Chargers, which is interesting. The only reason we know this is because him and Justin Herbert got elected to the same Pro Bowl back. I think it was the very last Pro Bowl that was actually a game instead of all these mini games and stuff that you're seeing nowadays and challenges. Mark Andrews and Justin Herbert actually went bananas in that Pro Bowl. You guys remember that? They were really good. They had a solid connection, a solid chemistry, and it was behind their effort, I think, that the AFC ended up winning that Pro Bowl. Mark Andrews, Justin Herbert, we know something's there. We know he's the kind of tight end that Herbert would thrive behind. We know the system that Jim Harbaugh's trying to build with the Baltimore Ravens exists with Mark Andrews, obviously. We know he's a great run blocker. We know he's capable of being a great receiver. What's stopping us? Well, Mark Andrews, I don't think is on the trade block right now. This is the kind of trade where you would have to incentivize the team in order to let them go. The only reason I could see the Ravens letting go of Mark Andrews is because they're worried of a regression at the same time they're having an uprising of Isaiah Likely, right? You're going to try and get value while you can get it. Right now, in my opinion, you've got a Mark Andrews that's still pretty, looked at as a good tight end, right? He's respected as a top tight end in the league. Every week that goes by that he's not performing that way is going to bring him down a notch, while at the same time Isaiah Likely is starting to rise, right? And so if the Ravens want to strike while the iron's hot, or I should say, if they want to move Mark Andrews now for a more guaranteed return rather than later where they risk a regression and maybe don't get anything back, that's the only kind of reason I can think they would move him. So the Chargers would have to actually pony up a decent compensation return for the Ravens. What would it cost? I don't know. I would say at least, even though he's 31 years old, I would say at least a third-round pick for Mark Andrews, even with all the question marks right now. It would be $11 million to sign him to the roster, so you'd have to move a little bit of money around. But I don't know, man. I think Mark Andrews could use the change of scenery where he can go back to being tight end 1. He would go to a team where he already has chemistry with the quarterback, obviously. Go back and watch the highlights of that Pro Bowl, man. It would blow your mind how good Justin Herbert was with Mark Andrews. And I honestly don't know if another player makes a bigger impact on this squad than Mark Andrews at this point. So right now, Mark Andrews, my favorite trade target. He's not at from what I'm hearing on the trade block right now, but it's one where if the Chargers do want to get aggressive and make that one big trade and Joe Ortiz makes his flagship, trademark big move this year, I would like it to be Mark Andrews or of a tight end of similar status. I just don't think you're going to find one right now. Tight ends are hard to come by. They develop a lot later. You're seeing some really good rookies come out of the draft right now, but the Chargers kind of missed the window on that. I really like Mark Andrews on this team for the next 3 years. And that would help buy them time to, bring in some new tight ends via the draft and start, getting them up to speed. And meanwhile, you got this really nice target and run blocking option in Mark Andrews. I don't know if the Ravens would be incentivized enough to move on from him right now. It would be a trade that you have to make happen. So there are revolving factors where I'm like, I don't know if it happens, but it's one that I would very much so be aggressive for if I were the Chargers. I'm getting ready to go fire up Madden right now, man, and make this trade for myself and just have some fun with it, because it's a very fun idea to think of what Justin Herbert could do with a legitimate tight end one. Well, guys, let me know some of your favorite trade targets. There's probably even more rumors flooding in as I'm filming this video. I mean, literally while I was filming the opener, I got a text from Jay Golden Mike. You guys know Golden Mike Jay. He texted me some of the Davante Adams rumors from LAFB, and I was like, oh man, I got to put that in the video now. So who knows what's going on? But there's going to be a lot of talks between now and November 5th, right? The trade deadline. I think the Chargers could be players this year, man. I really, really do. I think Joe Ortiz has already proven he's not the same Tom Telesco we've had for so many years. And I'm really hoping that his relationship with Baltimore and all that, and the situation with Mark Andrews, I feel it so deeply in my soul that this would be such a good move for the Chargers, such a good move for Mark Andrews. I think the Ravens get some nice draft compensation and let their tight end one in Isaiah Likely thrive. I don't know, man. We'll see. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Hit us up with a like and sub on your way out if you did enjoy this content. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up, stay frosty. Give me Mark Andrews, dude. Give me Mark Andrews, please.